Belle stepped onto the stage, the applause washing over her like a tide of validation she had once believed she'd never receive. The director shook her hand, pride in his eyes, and guided her to the microphone. Belle's fingers curled around the edges of the podium. A deep breath steadied her. Then she spoke. "I stand here tonight, not because I'm the smartest in the room or the most experienced. I stand here because when lives were at stake, I chose what was right, even when it wasn't easy. Even when it was dangerous." She scanned the crowd. Many looked moved. Others looked uncomfortable. "I learned that a hospital shouldn't just heal patients." Her gaze brushed Holly and Stan. "It should protect its own people too." Ethan and her friends smiled with pride. Belle continued, voice stronger. "Tonight is not a celebration of me. It's a reminder that integrity should never be the exception in medicine. It must be the rule." A powerful silence hung in the air. Then the applause thundered again. Belle stepped back, heart racing, but victory tasted real. The director turned to introduce the next segment when a loud crash shattered the moment. Everyone turned. The main doors burst open as two uniformed police officers entered the ballroom. A focused hush fell instantly. The lead officer walked straight toward Stan and Holly. "Dr. Stanley Crow and Dr. Holly Brent." Stan stood frozen. Holly's lips trembled. "You're under arrest for evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and malpractice endangerment in connection with the incident involving Dr. Belle Perez." Gasps erupted around the room. Handcuffs snapped closed. Holly broke first, screaming, pleading. "This is a mistake. Belle is lying. She set us up." Her voice cracked into desperation as she was dragged away. Stan didn't speak. He just glared at Belle, a final promise of revenge buried in his eyes, before police pulled him out of the room. Flash after flash, reporters capturing it all. The chaos swirled, but Belle stood still at the center of it, the truth finally loud. Ethan reached her side first, his voice soft. "You did it." Belle exhaled shakily. "No," she whispered. "We did." But before she could fully breathe, the director returned to the microphone, clearing his throat with urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid there's more." Belle's heart lurched. The entire room turned toward the stage again as he delivered the news. "We have discovered there was a third accomplice. Someone who has not yet been revealed." The silence was suffocating. A third enemy. Still hiding. Still watching. Belle's victory was real, but the war had only changed shape. And somewhere in the shadows of that glittering ballroom, someone smiled. The murmurs spread like wildfire through the ballroom. A third accomplice. Belle's spine tensed as she scanned the crowd. She could feel someone's eyes on her, tracing every breath she took. Ethan noticed the way her shoulders stiffened. "Hey," he whispered, stepping closer. "Whatever this is, we'll face it." Belle nodded, but her pulse refused to slow. The director tried to regain order, reassuring everyone the evening would continue, but the shift in the air was unmistakable, excitement replaced by unease. Phil and Shine pushed through the crowd to reach Belle. "You okay?" Shine asked. Belle swallowed. "I'm fine. Just processing." Phil crossed his arms. "A third accomplice? It has to be someone who had access. Someone who knew everything." Belle's voice dropped to a whisper. "And someone who wanted me gone." Before they could dissect it further, a nurse from the ER staff rushed up, breathless. "Belle, I'm so sorry, but they need you downstairs. A trauma case just came in. They're asking specifically for you." Belle blinked. "For me?" "Yes." "Patient said your name before he passed out." A chill slithered down Belle's back. Ethan stepped forward. "Who is it?" "We don't know yet. He was found outside the hospital entrance. Severe head injury, possible fall or assault." Belle wasted no more time. Her heels clicked sharply against marble floors as she moved. Ethan, Phil, and Shine followed close behind. Inside the trauma bay, chaos met them instantly. Beeping monitors, the sharp smell of antiseptic, nurses moving with urgency. The patient lay motionless on the gurney, blood matted into his hair. Belle grabbed gloves and stepped forward. "Vitals." BP dropping. Pulse thready. Belle leaned over to assess the wound, and then froze. That face. She knew it. Ethan saw it too. Oh my God. It was Dr. Ken. The one who fought for her. The one who protected her. Belle's breath caught. Prepare for CT. Notify neurosurgery. We are not losing him. As the team moved, Dr. Ken's eyes fluttered weakly open, just for a second. He focused on Belle. Struggling, trembling lips formed 3 desperate words. Not safe yet. Then his body went limp as monitors blared warnings. Belle's blood turned to ice. The third accomplice wasn't just watching. They were still attacking. Push a bolus. Keep his airways secure. Belle commanded, voice sharp with urgency. The trauma team scrambled to stabilize Dr. Ken while neurosurgeons were paged overhead. Belle applied pressure to the wound, her gloves slick with blood. Ethan stood just behind her, fear tightening his voice. He knew. Whoever this third person is, they came for him. Belle forced her focus to the medicine. We can't let him crash. Not now. A nurse called out vitals. BP rising, he's responding. Relief washed briefly through the room, but tension remained coiled tight. Ken was rushed toward the elevators, disappearing with a swarm of surgeons. Belle stepped back, heartbeat thundering. Shine touched her shoulder. Belle, this isn't over. No, Belle stared toward the now empty hallway. It's just beginning. Hours later, Belle stood outside the operating theater, scrub cap in hand. Ethan offered her a water bottle, but she barely noticed. Phil paced in front of them. Someone tried to silence him. That says he knew exactly who was involved. Belle nodded slowly. Which means they're desperate. And close. Ethan frowned. You think they work inside the hospital? They'd have to, Belle whispered. Access. Timing. Knowledge. Before another word could form, the OR doors opened. A neurosurgeon stepped out, mask hanging from one ear. He made it through the surgery, the doctor reported. He's stable, for now. We'll move him to ICU for monitoring. Belle exhaled, tension easing, but only slightly. Can I see him when he wakes? She asked. Of course. But it might be hours. The surgeon left, and silence lingered. Finally, Ethan spoke, low and serious. Whoever this is, they aren't done. We need protection. Security. Something. Belle lifted her eyes, fiercer than ever. No. What we need is the truth. Later. ICU window. Belle watched Dr. Ken through the glass, pale, fragile, machines breathing for him. Her mind churned. Connections. Motives. Shadows. Who else wanted her destroyed? Who would go this far? A faint reflection in the glass made her turn. The hospital director approached quietly, hands clasped behind his back. Dr. Perez, he said with a grave expression. There's something we uncovered. Belle's voice tightened. What is it? He glanced down the hallway, ensuring no one listened. It appears that confidential reports, complaints you submitted, were leaked. Altered. Someone inside the administrative chain helped Dr. Holly and Dr. Stan cover their tracks. Belle's breath shortened. Who? The director hesitated, reluctant, then spoke the name. Chief HR Officer. Alyssa Crane. Belle's eyes widened. Alyssa, the smiling, polished executive who always said she had Belle's back. The one who insisted there wasn't enough evidence to act sooner. Her chest tightened with betrayal and fury. She orchestrated everything, Belle said, realization burning cold. She's the third accomplice. Before the director could respond, a sudden alarm shrieked through the ICU. Nurses rushed into Dr. Ken's room. His monitors spiked wildly. Belle's heart dropped as one urgent code rang out. V-fib. He's crashing. The attack on the truth wasn't finished. And Dr. Ken's survival was balancing on a knife's edge. Charging to 200, a nurse shouted, paddles pressed against Dr. Ken's chest. Belle stood frozen outside the glass. The sharp thud of the defibrillator echoed down the corridor. No response. Charging again. Clear. Dr. Ken's body jolted violently. Belle's fingers dug into her palms. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Phil grabbed her arm. "Belle, look." A flat line. Silence swallowed everything. The nurse's voice cracked. He's gone." Belle shook her head violently. "No. He was stable. He was." Shine stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. "Someone got to him. Again." Belle pressed her forehead to the window, grief and rage twisting deep. Dr. Ken, the first surgeon to believe in her, the mentor who gave her a chance, now dead because he protected her. Ethan came beside her, voice tight and cold. "This was no accident. Someone wants us terrified." Belle straightened slowly. "No," she whispered, anger sharpening every word. "They want us silent." She turned, eyes burning. "I'm not giving them that." Hospital security office. Minutes later. The director stood there, trembling, unable to process the sudden shift from hope to horror. "We'll involve outside investigators," he said numbly. "This can't be internal anymore." Belle stepped forward, voice clear and controlled. "Alyssa Crane. She had motive. She had access. And she has everything to lose now that Ken talked to me." Security nodded grimly. "We'll request her presence immediately." Before they could make the call, a loud scream echoed from the hallway. They rushed out. A young intern stood collapsed on the floor, shaking violently, eyes wide with terror. "W Ward 9, it's Alyssa," he stuttered. "She's." "What happened?" Belle knelt beside him. He swallowed hard, barely able to speak. "She's dead." Ward 9, scene of the crime. Alyssa Crane lay motionless on the floor, eyes open in a frozen look of panic. A syringe was still in her hand. Overdose. Self-inflicted. Or staged. Ethan muttered, horrified. "That's 2 deaths in less than an hour." Belle stared at Alyssa's lifeless body, her thoughts racing. She was ready to talk. She ran out of ways to hide. So someone removed her from the equation, just like Dr. Ken. A chilling realization slid down Belle's spine. "There's a 4th person," she whispered. "Someone more powerful. Someone still watching us." Phil looked around, suddenly aware of the silent cameras overhead. Shine hugged herself, trembling. Ethan moved closer to Belle, his voice steady but shaken. "We need to leave this ward. Now." Belle nodded, but her heart hammered with a new, horrifying clarity. The real enemy wasn't any of the people they'd faced so far. They were only the pawns. And somewhere in this hospital, the true mastermind was still playing the game. The fluorescent lights above seemed suddenly too bright, too exposed. Belle stepped back from Alyssa's body, pulse racing. Shine whispered hoarsely, "If Alyssa was working with them, and she's dead too, then who's left?" Belle didn't answer, because her mind already knew the truth. Someone with higher authority. Someone whose decisions could hide anything. Phil swallowed hard. Director mentioned there were only 3 signatures on the internal approvals besides Alyssa's. Belle's voice turned sharp. "Who?" Phil looked at her, dread settling in his eyes. "The chief medical officer." Ethan froze. "You mean?" Belle finished for him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Harris. The man who had welcomed her into the surgical program. The man who praised her in public. The man who always had a charming smile and perfect words. The most respected surgeon in the building." Hospital director's office. Not long after. Bang, bang, bang. Belle pounded on the director's door as security flanked her. The director opened it, startled. "Belle." "What now?" "It's Dr. Harris." Her voice was icy calm. "He's the one we've been missing." The director's face paled. "That's a serious accusation against one of the most decorated staff." "It's not an accusation," Belle cut in. "It's a fact." Security stepped forward. "We'll bring him in quietly," the guard said. But as they turned, a page blared overhead. "Code Blue. Conference Hall. Code Blue. Conference Hall." Belle's heart dropped. "That's near Harris's office," Phil breathed. They all ran. Conference hall. The doors swung open, and the scene was chaos. Nurses clustering, equipment overturned, and in the center, Dr. Harris sat on the floor, blood dripping from his temple, hands cuffed behind his back. 2 security officers pinned him in place. He was laughing, a low, unhinged laugh that ricocheted off the sterile walls. "Well done, Bell," he said, voice chillingly calm. "You connected the dots." Bell glared at him, fists clenched. "You killed them. Holly, Stan, they were working for you. You covered their harassment. When Alyssa and Dr. Ken were about to expose the truth, you—" He tilted his head innocently. "Killed them. My dear, you think I dirty my own hands?" His smile widened, predatory. "I only create opportunities. People like Holly and Stan, they handle the mess." Bell's stomach twisted. "You ruined lives for what? Prestige? Power? For control," Harris hissed. "Fear is the strongest currency in a hospital, Bell. And interns are the easiest to break." "Not me," Bell said. "Not anymore." His eyes flashed with venom. "No. You were the one who slipped away. You destroyed everything I built." Security yanked him upright. Harris leaned close as they dragged him past her, voice a serpent's whisper. "This isn't over." Bell didn't flinch. "It is for you." He was hauled away, still laughing. Silence fell. Shine wiped her tears. Phil exhaled shakily. Ethan wrapped his arm around Bell, grounding her back into reality. "You did it," he murmured. Bell's gaze followed the direction Dr. Harris disappeared. "No," she whispered, voice steady and full of quiet fire. "We all did." 2 weeks later, EDV Medical Center. The air in the hospital had changed. The sharp tension that once lurked behind every door had faded, replaced by an almost foreign calm. The investigation was complete. Dr. Harris's crimes, financial, ethical, and personal, were exposed in full. His network of manipulation unraveled one confession at a time. Dr. Holly had confessed to falsifying evaluations. Dr. Stan admitted to altering patient schedules to set interns up for failure. Alyssa's name was cleared, her death ruled a targeted silencing. And at the center of it all stood Belle Perez, the intern who had refused to be silent. She walked through the surgical ward now with quiet authority, her ID badge glinting under the lights. Nurses nodded when she passed. Residents smiled. Even senior surgeons treated her with deference. Phil met her at the nurses' station, a folder in hand. "Final report," he said, handing it over. "The board's filing it today. You're officially credited for initiating the internal reforms." Shine grinned, leaning against the counter. "They're even renaming the mentorship program, the Perez Initiative." Belle froze. "You're joking." "Nope." Shine nudged her shoulder. "Looks like your hospital history now." Belle laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. "All I wanted was to survive this place." Phil smiled. "You did more than that. You made it better." That evening, Belle found herself standing outside the hospital's new Wellness and Ethics Center. A banner hung over the entrance. For courage, compassion, and change. Inside, staff gathered for the reopening ceremony. Mr. Payson spoke at the podium, his tone reverent. "When systems fail, it takes one person's integrity to rebuild them. Miss Perez reminded us that accountability and empathy must guide our profession. From this day forward, her story will be part of how we train every intern." He gestured toward Belle. The crowd turned. Applause erupted. Belle stepped forward, trying to steady her breath. She wasn't used to attention. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the microphone. "I didn't start out brave," she said quietly. "I was scared, every day. But fear only wins when you let it silence you. I learned that integrity isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when you're terrified." She looked at the interns gathered near the back, the next generation. "If you ever feel powerless, remember this: courage multiplies when it's shared. None of us stand alone." Applause broke again, longer, louder. Later, as the ceremony ended, Ethan waited by the garden entrance. The evening light made the air shimmer with gold. "You spoke beautifully," he said as she approached. Belle smiled faintly. "I spoke honestly." He reached for her hand. "That's why everyone listens." They walked together in silence for a moment, the hum of the hospital fading behind them. "You know," Ethan said, glancing at her, "for someone who once wanted to quit, you've become the heartbeat of this place." Belle chuckled softly. "Maybe that's how healing starts, by staying where it hurts until it stops hurting." Ethan squeezed her hand. "And now?" She looked toward the city lights, her reflection shining faintly in the glass doors. "Now," she said, "I think it's time to live." The hospital doors closed behind them, and as they stepped into the night, the world ahead no longer looked like a battlefield, but a beginning. For Belle Perez, this wasn't survival anymore. It was Legacy Point 1 month later, EDV Medical Center. Belle's mornings no longer began with dread. She moved with purpose, reviewing charts, organizing rounds, and checking in on interns who now greeted her with grateful smiles. Her badge was updated. Intern Liaison, Surgical Department. Belle Perez. Phil and Shine walked beside her as usual, but now the conversations were lighter, laughs replacing whispered strategizing. "You realize you've become the person everyone wants to rotate with?" Shine teased. Belle shook her head, amused. "If they only knew how terrified I used to be." "Oh, we know," Phil snorted, bumping her shoulder gently. "You hid it well, mostly." Just then, Dr. Ken stepped out of the staff room. "Perez," he called. "A moment." Her teammates winked and stepped back. Belle approached. "We reviewed your commendation application," he said, flipping through a file. "I'm pleased to inform you, you made the shortlist for Intern of the Year." Belle blinked. "But that's usually for final phase interns." "And," he said, one brow raised, "you've done more in a few months than some doctors do in years. Keep proving us right." She nodded, humbled and glowing inside. As Dr. Ken walked away, Shine practically pounced. "Intern of the Year," she exclaimed. "That's huge." Belle smiled shyly. "It's just a nomination. Nothing is guaranteed." Phil grinned. "With you, everything feels guaranteed." Later that night, rooftop garden. The city lights painted the sky silver. Belle leaned against the railing, the cool breeze brushing her hair back. Footsteps behind her. "You hiding from the world?" Ethan asked, joining her. "Just breathing," she replied softly. They stood side by side, silence warm and comfortable. "You once told me you felt like you didn't belong here," Ethan said, voice thoughtful. "Still think that?" Belle exhaled, considering. "No," she said. "I think I finally found my place." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "And the hospital is better for it." She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the calm she had fought so hard to earn. "When the program ends," Ethan murmured, "what do you want next?" Belle looked up at him, eyes bright with new dreams. "Surgery residency," she whispered. "Right here. Where I started. Where I changed." Ethan laughed softly. "Then I'll be right here with you through all of it." Belle felt hope bloom in her chest, clean, brave, and limitless. The hospital lights glowed below like a constellation she finally belonged to. Because of her courage, others would rise. Because of her integrity, abuse would be challenged. Because she stayed, change began. Belle Perez didn't just survive the system. She rebuilt it. And this was only chapter 1.2 months later, official award ceremony. The auditorium was filled with medical staff, residents, board members, and benefactors. Banners hung high. Intern of the Year, Excellence in Courage and Leadership. Phil and Shine were in the front row, practically vibrating with anticipation. Belle stood backstage, heart pounding. She wasn't intimidated, just overwhelmed by how far she had come. Mr. Payson stepped up to the podium. This year, one intern rose above extraordinary challenges, not only demonstrating clinical excellence, but reshaping the very culture of this institution. Whispers rolled through the crowd. Everyone knew who he meant. "With honor," he finished, "we present this award to Miss Belle Perez." Applause erupted. Belle walked onto the stage, lights warming her face. She accepted the plaque, her name engraved in gold. She spoke into the microphone, steady and confident. I accept this not just for myself, but for every intern who felt too small to speak up. For those who doubted they belonged, know this. Courage isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to keep standing. The crowd rose, a standing ovation. After the ceremony, Ethan found her first, pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm proud of you," he said into her hair. "So incredibly proud." Phil fanned himself dramatically. "Our girl is famous now." Shine sniffled. "Don't mind me, I'm just emotional." Belle laughed, tears prickling her eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without you two." "Damn right," Phil said. "We're the golden trio now." They took photos together, some silly, some heartfelt. Moments they would never forget. Later, surgical conference room. Dr. Ken called Belle in privately. "I have one more announcement," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. She opened it carefully. "You are officially accepted into the EDV Surgery Residency Program, commencing immediately after internship completion." Belle froze. Dr. Ken smiled. "Welcome to your future, Dr. Perez." Her hands shook as she pressed the letter to her chest. "This is my dream," she whispered. "You earned it," he replied. "Every step of the way." That night, outside the hospital, Belle and Ethan sat together on the same bench where she once cried from fear and humiliation. Now she was crying for a different reason: joy. Ethan brushed a tear from her cheek. "What now?" he asked gently. Belle smiled, confident, radiant. "Now," she said, "I rise higher." He kissed her, soft, certain. The hospital behind them glowed like a promise she had already started to fulfill. Belle Perez was no one's target anymore. No one's victim. No one's rumor. She was a surgeon in the making. A leader. A survivor turned champion. And this time, everyone knew her name. 6 months later. New beginnings. The walls of EDV Medical Center felt different to Belle now. Not because the building changed, but because she had. She stood at the entrance of the new intern support center, the one she worked tirelessly to design. Fresh posters lined the walls. Speak. Report. Be heard. No intimidation. No silence. Phil was inside organizing resources, while Shine was giving a brief to the newly arrived interns. Belle looked on, proud. This was what real change looked like. Residency orientation. Main hall. Doctors filled the hall, young, nervous, eager. Belle stood among the incoming surgical residents, wearing her new white coat. Her coat. She traced her name with her fingers. Dr. Belle Perez, surgical resident. Dr. Ken took the podium. "This year, we welcome residents who have excelled," he said. Then his eyes found Belle. And one who redefined excellence. More applause. She bowed her head humbly. A fellow resident leaned toward her, whispering, "Is it true you took down a corrupt surgeon?" Belle smiled softly. "I didn't do it alone." But she no longer shied away from the truth. She embraced it. Evening. Rooftop garden. Ethan waited with 2 cups of coffee. The sky had shifted to a warm purple, city lights flickering below. "Dr. Perez," he greeted playfully. Belle smirked. "That still feels surreal." Ethan's gaze softened. "You earned every letter of that title." They sat close, shoulders touching, watching the last streaks of daylight fade. "What's your next goal?" Ethan asked. "You've already accomplished so much." Belle inhaled deeply. The future tasted bright. "I want to become a trauma surgeon," she said. "Be there when the stakes are highest. When lives depend on a steady hand and a fearless heart." Ethan nodded, admiration shining in his eyes. "I believe in you. Always." Belle rested her head on his shoulder, letting silence speak her gratitude. A call for help. Emergency department. Suddenly, alarms blared. A multi-vehicle accident was incoming. Multiple patients. Critical condition. Belle stood up instantly, eyes sharp, body ready. Ethan grabbed her hand for one last grounding second. "Go," he whispered. "Save them." Belle rushed inside, coat flying behind her like a banner. The emergency room doors swung open. Paramedics poured in with stretchers. Blood. Panic. Life hanging by a thread. Belle stepped forward, voice clear and commanding. "Trauma Bay 1, airway compromised. Bay 2, prep for transfusion. I'm taking primary on the chest wound." The staff followed her lead, without hesitation. This was her arena now. Her purpose. That night, several lives were saved. And when the chaos finally settled, Dr. Ken approached her, awe in his voice. "You're a natural," he said. "Trauma chose you." Belle removed her gloves, breathing heavily, yet glowing with certainty. "No," she answered. "I chose trauma." Belle Perez had stepped into the future she forged with her own strength. Not as a survivor anymore, but as a protector. And every heartbeat she saved would become part of her growing legacy. Same night, hospital corridor. Belle walked through the quiet hallway, exhaustion making her steps slow. Suddenly, Ethan appeared behind her, holding out a bottle of water. "You forgot to hydrate," he said. She took it, surprisingly emotional at the simple gesture. "I keep getting so caught up. I forget I'm human." Ethan smiled softly. "That's why I'm here. To remind you." Their fingers brushed, warm, steady. A nurse passed by and winked. Belle rolled her eyes but didn't pull her hand away. She wasn't hiding anymore. Cafeteria. Midnight break. Shine dropped into the seat beside her, hair a mess, still in scrubs. "You were insane tonight," Shine said proudly. "Everyone was talking about you." Belle chuckled. "Good insane or bad insane?" "Hero insane," Shine grinned. "The best kind." Phil joined them with a clipboard in hand. "Anonymous harassment reports dropped to 0 this month," he said triumphantly. Belle's smile widened. "That's the result we fought for." A pause. The three of them looked at one another, shared victories written in tired but bright eyes. They weren't just colleagues. They were a force. Parking lot. Moments before leaving. Ethan leaned against his car, arms crossed, waiting. Belle approached, shivering slightly from the night air. "Tough first day as a resident," he teased. She huffed. "Tough. But perfect." He opened the passenger door for her. She hesitated, then looked up at him. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Failing. Freezing. Not being enough when someone needs me the most." Ethan stepped closer, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't freeze," he said. "You fight." Belle searched his eyes, and found only truth. "Okay," she whispered. They got into the car. No tension, just warmth. Ethan's apartment. Balcony. They shared noodles from a takeaway box, city lights blinking like distant stars. Belle slurped loudly by accident. Ethan laughed. For once, she didn't feel embarrassed. She leaned her back against his chest as he wrapped his arms around her. "A new chapter starts today," he murmured. Belle gazed at the skyline, bold, endless. "And we're writing it ourselves," she replied. "Morning rounds, trauma floor." Belle checked her patient charts, voice calm as she updated the team. A nurse approached quickly. "Dr. Perez, Bay 3 is requesting you specifically." Belle nodded and entered. The teenage boy she operated on last night looked up weakly. "You saved me, right?" he asked. Belle smiled gently. "We saved you. Now you focus on healing." His mother grabbed Belle's hands, eyes full of tears. "Thank you for giving my son back to me." Belle swallowed hard, emotion rising but controlled. "This is why we do it," she said quietly as she left the room. Attending evaluation. Conference room. Dr. Ken reviewed her performance sheet. He looked up, expression unreadable. "You were exceptional." Belle exhaled in relief. "But," he continued, "you push yourself too far. No rest means mistakes later." Belle nodded. "I'll find balance." He smiled slightly. "Good. Because you're scheduled for 2 major trauma assists this week." Her heart surged, nervous, excited. "Yes, sir." Courtyard, short break. Ethan approached with coffee, as usual. Belle accepted it automatically. "You look alive," he noted. "I feel alive," she admitted. He brushed his thumb over her fingers, just once. A grounding touch. "Big things ahead for you," he said. Belle smiled. "For us." Intern Support Center. Phil taped a new chart on the board. Zero tolerance. Anti-harassment protocol. Shine briefed interns confidently. "If someone abuses power here, they answer for it." Belle stood beside them, no longer the one needing help, but the one making sure help existed. A first-year intern lingered behind, anxious. "Dr. Perez," she whispered. "If someone tries to intimidate me, can I come to you?" Belle placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Yes. Always." Fear in the girl's eyes eased instantly. Belle knew that feeling. Tonight, she replaced it with safety. End of shift, elevator doors closing. As the doors slid shut, Belle caught her reflection in the polished metal. A surgeon in the making. A protector. A survivor who rose. She didn't look away. She smiled back. Belle stepped out of the elevator just as the trauma pager blared overhead. Nurses and residents hurried toward the emergency bay. Without hesitation, Belle joined them, snapping on gloves as she jogged alongside the gurney. A construction worker, mid-40s, unconscious, crushed chest trauma. Alarms screamed as his blood pressure plummeted. "Prep for thoracotomy," Dr. Ken ordered. Belle positioned at the left side, ready. The scalpel hit his hand. He gave Belle one sharp nod. "You're with me." They opened the chest in seconds. Belle's hands were steady, precise. Blood pooled dark and fast. "Clamp here," Dr. Ken instructed. She did. Perfect placement. The rhythm began to return on the monitor. "Beautiful," Ken breathed out, approving. The man stabilized enough for transfer to the oar. When they stepped back, Belle realized every pair of eyes in the room was on her. Fear once controlled those moments. No. Respect. After the operation, Belle scrubbed out, adrenaline still high. Phil leaned against the wall, giving her a stunned grin. "You were in the zone." "That was insane, Belle." She pushed damp hair from her face. "We saved him. That's what matters." "No," he said firmly. "You saved him." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. "Ethan. Lunch later. I'll bring the sandwich you like. And maybe a reason to smile." Slightly smiling face. Belle's cheeks warmed. Her fingers typed before she even thought. "I'm already smiling." She returned to rounds. On the pediatric ward, a little girl recovering from appendicitis spotted Belle coming down the hall. "Dr. Belle," she chirped, arms raised. Belle lifted her carefully onto her hip. "You're sitting up. That means you're getting stronger." The child held out a crooked paper crown. "I made this for you. Because you're brave." Belle blinked, caught off guard by emotion. "I'll treasure it," she whispered. Later, she walked past Dr. Holly in the hallway. Their eyes met. Holly stepped aside first. No poisoned smile. No whispered insults. Just defeat. Belle didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She simply walked past. Her dignity spoke louder than anything she could say. Outside, sunlight warmed her shoulders as she sat on a bench to catch a breath. She glanced at the paper crown in her hand. Brave. Once, she had to convince herself of that. Now the world saw it without question. Her phone buzzed again. "Ethan, I'm here. Look up." She did. He stood a few feet away holding lunch and a single white lily. Belle stood, unable to stop her smile. "Hi," she breathed. Ethan brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his voice soft. "You're my hero." And for the first time, Belle truly believed it. Belle moved swiftly down the trauma floor, the hum of monitors and hurried footsteps around her. A car accident victim had just arrived, a young man with multiple fractures and internal bleeding. She assessed the patient at once, directing Phil and Shine with precise, calm authority. "Phil, prep the blood transfusion. Shine, ensure the airway is secure. Let's stabilize him before surgery," she instructed, her voice carrying the certainty that had become her trademark. As the team worked, Belle monitored vitals, anticipating potential complications. A sudden drop in blood pressure triggered alarms, but she stayed composed. Fluid bolus now. Keep the O2 at 15 liters. Notify or prep. We'll need him ready in 10 minutes, she ordered. The interns watched her closely, absorbing her poise under pressure. Every decision was deliberate, every instruction clear. The patient's condition stabilized just enough for transport, earning approving nods from the attending surgeons. After the transfer, Belle took a moment to review charts with Phil and Shine. We've got to ensure our documentation is meticulous. If anyone questions our protocols, this is what protects the team and the patient, she reminded them. A junior intern approached hesitantly. Miss Belle, do you think I could assist with the next case? Belle smiled warmly. Of course. I'll guide you every step of the way. Confidence comes with practice, and mistakes are part of learning, safely. As the day progressed, Belle moved seamlessly from patient to patient, mentoring interns, coordinating critical care, and maintaining a calm, authoritative presence. Even the attending surgeons who had once doubted her now watched with admiration. By the end of the morning rounds, the trauma floor had transformed. Interns worked with confidence, nurses moved with clear coordination, and Belle's leadership had set a tone of calm efficiency that no one could ignore. The hospital, once a place of fear for her, now resonated with respect for Belle and the culture of courage she had cultivated. After a brief pause to review notes, Belle returned to the next critical case, a pediatric trauma patient with internal bleeding from a fall. She briefed the team quickly, assigning roles with precision. Shine, prep the OR. Phil, coordinate blood products and monitor vitals. Interns, follow my instructions step by step. Ask questions only if it's urgent. The room buzzed with controlled urgency as Belle guided each move, her eyes scanning every monitor, every chart, every subtle change in the patient's condition. When a sudden arrhythmia appeared, she reacted instantly. Administer 0.5 milligrams epinephrine. Increase fluids. Check airway and oxygenation continuously. The team executed flawlessly, buoyed by Belle's calm decisiveness. By the time the attending arrived, the patient was stable enough for surgery. The surgeon gave Belle a nod of approval. You've handled this with remarkable composure, Miss Perez. Excellent coordination. Belle allowed herself a small breath of relief, but immediately refocused. Let's prep for transfer and brief the OR team for continuity, she instructed. As she walked back toward the nurses' station, several interns approached, their eyes bright with respect. Miss Belle, thank you for letting us be involved today, one said. Belle smiled gently. It's a team effort. You'll learn the most when you participate and observe carefully. Remember, staying calm is just as important as skill. Phil nudged her subtly. Look around. Everyone here is watching, learning, and respecting you. Belle nodded, feeling the weight of her influence settling in. For the first time, the hospital didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a place she could shape for the better, one patient, one intern, and one act of guidance at a time. Later that afternoon, Belle convened a quick debrief with her team. The interns gathered around, notebooks ready, while Phil and Shine stood nearby, silently supportive. Today went well, Belle began, her voice calm but firm. We had challenges, but everyone followed instructions, stayed attentive, and adapted quickly. That's exactly how we need to operate every day. One intern hesitated before speaking. Miss Belle, how do you stay so composed under pressure? Belle paused, choosing her words carefully. It's not about not feeling pressure. It's about recognizing it, trusting your knowledge, and trusting your team. Panic doesn't solve problems. Coordination does. Shine smiled. And experience helps too, but having a leader like Belle makes it easier to stay focused. Phil nodded. We've all seen her turn chaos into control. It's inspiring. As the debrief ended, Belle's phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. How's my favorite doctor? She smiled, typing back, survived another day. Can't wait to tell you about it tonight. The hospital corridors began to empty as shifts changed. Belle lingered briefly by the windows, looking out at the city below. Months ago, these same streets had felt overwhelming, even threatening. Now, they seemed full of possibilities. She had not only survived, she had carved a space where she could lead, mentor, and protect others. Turning back to her team, Belle felt a renewed sense of purpose. The future of the surgery department, and the interns who would pass through it, was something she could influence for the better. And for the first time, she didn't just imagine that future. She was actively building it. As evening approached, Belle made her way to the lounge to check on a few remaining patient charts. The space was quiet, a soft hum of fluorescent lights above, and she found Phil and Shine already reviewing notes. "Looks like the trauma floor cases are stabilizing nicely," Phil said, glancing up. Belle nodded. "Yes, but we need to keep tracking post-op recovery closely. Any small change could indicate a complication." Shine smiled. "You're like a hawk, Belle. It's impressive how you keep everything in check." Belle chuckled softly, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "It's not just me. We're all responsible for each other here. That's the point." As they wrapped up, a young intern approached hesitantly. "Miss Belle, can I ask for advice on suturing techniques? I don't want to make mistakes in front of the attending." Belle crouched slightly to meet the intern's gaze, offering a reassuring smile. "You'll make mistakes, it's part of learning. But you'll learn faster if you ask questions and observe carefully. I'll guide you." For the next hour, Belle walked the intern through proper techniques, correcting gently and encouraging confidence. Phil and Shine observed quietly, proud of how naturally she had become a mentor. By the time Belle stepped outside, the sky had turned a soft shade of twilight. She felt a lightness in her chest that had been absent for months. The fear and uncertainty that had once defined her days were gone. She pulled out her phone, seeing a message from Ethan. "Ready to hear everything?" Belle smiled, texting back, "Yes. Tonight. Can't wait to see you." As she walked toward the hospital exit, she realized the journey was far from over, but the path ahead felt different now, filled with purpose, strength, and the quiet certainty that she was capable of facing anything that came her way. Belle returned home later that evening, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond her window. Ethan was waiting, leaning casually against the doorway, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "You look lighter," he remarked, his voice soft. "Like a weight has been lifted." Belle smiled, setting her bag down. "It has, Ethan. It's been hard, but I finally feel like I can breathe. And I want to tell you everything, from the worst moments to the triumphs." They sat together, and Belle recounted each challenge, the constant intimidation, the manipulations by Holly and Stan, the moments of doubt, and the careful strategy that had turned the tide. She spoke of her allies, Phil and Shine, and how together they had protected not only herself but every other intern who could have faced similar harassment. Ethan listened quietly, absorbing every detail. When she finished, he reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "Belle, I don't know how you did it. The courage, the calm, you're incredible." She leaned against him, feeling a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to fully embrace in weeks. "I couldn't have done it without the people who believed in me. And without you, Ethan. Just knowing you were there, it helped." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You've earned this, Belle. Not just the respect or the recognition, but peace. You've proven something important, to yourself and to everyone around you. You can face anything now." Belle closed her eyes, letting the quiet triumph settle within her. For the first time, she felt fully in control, not just of her career, but of her life. The hospital was no longer a place of fear, it was a place of growth, mentorship, and accomplishment. And she had become more than a survivor, she had become a leader. Outside, the city hummed softly, indifferent to the battles won within hospital walls. But inside, Belle felt a certainty she had never known. She was ready for whatever came next, stronger, wiser, and unafraid. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream, not just of surviving, but of thriving. The following morning, Belle returned to the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose. The hallways felt different now, less oppressive, less tense. Interns passed by with tentative smiles, some stopping to nod in acknowledgement. She caught a few whispers of admiration as she moved through the corridors, and for the first time, she didn't feel the sting of scrutiny, only respect. At the nurses' station, Phil and Shine were already reviewing charts. "Morning," Belle greeted, sliding into the space beside them. "Morning, boss," Phil said with a grin. "Board reports today?" Belle nodded. "Yes, But it's not just about reports. I want to ensure the improvements we've made are sustainable. No one else should face what we went through. Shine nodded. We'll help. Every step of the way. Belle spent the morning checking the interns' progress, mentoring them through practical procedures, answering questions, and quietly reinforcing confidence. She noticed subtle signs of fear and hesitation in a few juniors, lingering traces of what Holly and Stan had instilled, but she met it with patience. Remember, Belle said to a small group of interns, skill grows with practice, but courage grows with action. Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Mistakes teach you, but fear should never control you. By mid-afternoon, a critical case arrived unexpectedly, a young patient with a severe trauma injury. Belle stepped forward immediately, coordinating the team with calm authority. Every instruction was precise, every movement deliberate. Phil and Shine followed her lead seamlessly, and the interns executed her directions with growing confidence. The procedure was challenging, the patient's condition unstable, but Belle's composed leadership kept the team focused. When the patient stabilized and was moved to recovery, the attending surgeon turned to her. Miss Perez, your presence of mind today saved a life. Your mentorship and leadership are exemplary. Belle exhaled, relief mingled with pride. This was the tangible proof that her efforts weren't just administrative, they directly impacted lives. Later, in the lounge, the interns gathered around her, whispering their gratitude. Miss Belle, you really make this place feel safe, one said quietly. Like we can actually learn without fear. Belle smiled, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. That's the goal, she replied. We're building something better, together. As she left for the evening, Belle glanced out over the city skyline, the sunset casting warm colors across the horizon. The battles weren't entirely over, there would always be challenges, but she now had confidence, allies, and a strategy. She had reclaimed her space, not through aggression, but through steadfast courage, intelligence, and compassion. For Belle, this was more than victory. It was a transformation, from a terrified intern to a leader, mentor, and force of positive change. And as she stepped out of the hospital, she knew her journey of growth, influence, and purpose was only just beginning.